At 10 feet long, 7 feet wide, and 4 feet tall, my 2,000-gallon aquarium is the largest community aquarium that I've ever set up. And in today's video, I want to talk about the fish. To summarize, we've got some Walrus in here, Severums, angelfish, sunshine pleco, tiger barbs, denizen barbs, archerfish. We've got Corydoras, and all of these are working out well together. We've got breeding between a couple of fish, and I'm going to let you guys guess which ones are breeding and laying eggs as you just kind of glance at this tank. Maybe you can see some of them actively doing it versus just assuming or guessing who's doing it. Let's start off with the Walrus. I kind of want to talk about them first, obviously, because you guys know me. I love them. This is a cichlid from South America. Their Latin name's Walrus amphicanthioids. I got this, the six that I do have, back in September of 2017. They didn't look like this, though. When you get a Walrus, they are much smaller, of course, but they also, their coloration as well as their patterns are incredibly different. They're like little camouflaged leaves when you first get them. And then over the next 2 years, they transition almost like through a metamorphosis into their adult form. It's incredibly fascinating, and it's a fish that it's incredibly difficult to get bored of or sick of, because you start with one fish and it's almost like you end up with an entirely different fish. A really big fish. Within their first years, they should get to at least 6 inches. By the second year, about 8, and then it slows down tremendously. These guys can potentially get up to a foot long, though. There's been reports of them getting up to 14 inches. I like to be a little more conservative with my experience, saying they get to about 10 inches in length, but reach sexual maturity at 6 inches. And when it comes to sexual maturity, well, these guys aren't sexually dimorphic. Males and females have so much in common. It's tough to say which one's male, which one's female, but a lot of the times the male will have a bit of a nuchal hump. The male will have minor differences, but they're not always guaranteed. The only way to tell with these guys is to vent them. Now, when you hear large and you hear cichlid, you automatically assume that like these guys can't go in with anything. They're just going to destroy the tank, rip it apart. They're going to need a massive tank. And a lot of that is just not accurate. See, these guys are large, docile, and gentle cichlids, and because of that, a pair of them could live happily in a 75-gallon, or get a few of them and grow them out until you get like a 120, which is 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. They do need a relatively large aquarium, but they are a large fish. However, when stocking with other fish, you just want to make sure that you stock them with things that won't beat them up, because the Walrus rarely tend to go after anything else. And they definitely don't eat smaller fish, like tetras, for example. I mean, you can keep neon tetras with these guys, and they're not going to eat them. The one thing you can't keep with these guys at all, ever, not once, is plants. You see, the Walrus is an omnivore leaning towards herbivore, so it likes a varied diet, but if you give it any sort of plants, including, I don't know, romaine lettuce on a clip, they're going to devour it. They absolutely love it. Now, I personally love the Walrus because of a number of factors, but it almost, like I said, goes through a metamorphosis, and you're waiting patiently for 2 to 3 years to get that final result. You know, those big yellow googly eyes, that large dorsal fin that almost looks like a mohawk, the color pattern and coloration of their scales, and that like black blotch in the center. I love their body form, and the fact that they are so docile and yet confident, just sitting in the center column of the water, just staring at you, kind of fluttering their fins, just so majestic. Absolutely love it. But one of the fascinating things that people don't talk about a lot of the times when it comes to Walrus is that they are only one of 3 fish on the planet that feed their fry off the mucus of their skin. Absolutely incredible. You guys know discus do that. There's only 3 fish in the world that do that, and Walrus is one of them. In fact, another name for the Walrus is the poor man's discus. Now, I do have a pair in this tank, and they are actively laying eggs. They do it every week or every 2 weeks. I've seen them sometimes. I've seen them 2 or 3 times, but somebody's eating the eggs. I could move these guys to a breeding tank, but there's no fun in that. I'm not a breeder. I'm not looking to get into that again. What I want to, I just want to see what happens in a community tank that's 2,000 gallons. That's the whole point. Who do you think's eating the eggs, though? I'll let you know shortly. Another fish. This tank is starting to become more and more nostalgic to me. Because when it comes to South America, my second favorite, or maybe top 5, top 10, all of these fish are in there, is the Severum, the Hero Severus, also known as the Severum, also from South America. Got them about 6 months ago. I've kept the red spot, I've kept red, I've kept the redhead or rot keel, and then of course the greens. The green Severum, the basic Severum, is what you'll find in the wild, is what I have in this tank. And I got them about 6 months ago, and within a year you should see about 6 inches of growth, and then it slows down really a lot. They have almost the same growth as a discus, and because of that they do get a little thicker, and because of that they need slightly larger aquariums than the discus. So with a discus, in my opinion, start off with a 20 gallon for the first fish, 10 gallons for every fish after that. Really basic rule of thumb, but it works. With these guys, 30 gallons for the first fish, 10 for every fish after that works well. Only because these guys get a little bigger and thicker. They also are probably twice as aggressive as a Waru, but still generally gentle. Stocking should be pretty much anything they can't fit in their mouth, and the best stocking option for Severums is simply more Severums. When I stock my tanks, a lot of the times, all the fish require the same water parameters, the temperatures, and diet. So almost everybody in here gets the same general varied diet. They all eat it, including the pleco that we're going to get to here shortly. When it comes to Severum, though, you might be wondering, like, how do you sex these guys? Are they actually sexually dimorphic, or how can you tell? Well, a lot of the times you can look at the fins. A lot of people will talk about how cichlids' fins in a male are more pointed on the dorsal or anal. The male gets bigger, the male's more colorful. It's so much easier with the Severum. Just look at their gill plates or the sides of their heads. The male is going to have squiggly marks, the female's not. And there you have it. That's how you sex a Severum. Pretty simple. You could do it at around 3 inches of size. Now the angelfish. There's not a whole lot to talk about with these guys that hasn't already been said on the internet and what people know, but this is a South American cichlid as well. I got these ones. These are just basic silvers about 6 to 8 months ago. It's the closest to wild caught looking that I could get. These guys should be 4 to 6 inches in a year, and when it comes to stocking and tank size, it's about the same as Severums, except they prefer a taller tank for, well, obvious reasons. Sexing in this tank, though, with this many angelfish, I do find that they do stick together. Not necessarily schooling, but shoaling a lot closer than I typically seen in smaller tanks. When I had these guys in a 120, they would spread out towards the entire tank, creating territories, and in the 2000, they have 0 territories. They just bunch up together a lot of the times. It's very interesting behavior that I'm observing in this 2000 versus when these fish were in 120s. Sexing an angelfish, of course, if you don't know how to do it, you gotta vent them. That's typically looking at their breeding tubes when they get to breeding age. Sometimes the male can have a nuchal hump. For me, or the male's fins will be a little bit more pointed and longer, etc. But for me, I don't really worry about the angel. They're so common, they're so affordable that a lot of the times you can potentially buy 6 to 8 of them and hope for a pair, and then rehome the others or trade them in or whatever your preference is there. The downside to angelfish, and I don't know if you guys agree with me, but they are suspiciously aggressive. Like, for such a dainty little fish with beautiful fins and a tiny little mouth, they're aggressive a lot of the times, mostly picking on their own type. They don't really go after other fish. So you can typically keep angelfish with almost anything that won't really go after the angel and eat their fins. A lot of the times, some people will say that you can't even keep neon tetras with an angelfish, but I know it's going to be hit or miss. And these guys are an omnivore, so they do really well in this tank. Now, I don't know if you guys guessed who's eating the Waru eggs yet, but it's my sunshine pleco, yet another South American fish, and this is the last of the South American fish. Originally, I wanted to have this as a South American aquarium, but then I got those archer fish, kind of threw that off, and now it's just a really cool community tank. I've had this sunshine pleco for about 2 years, but this is a pleco that gets big. It gets to about a foot long. However, they're not incredibly active, and they don't do what you think. You can keep these guys in a 55 to 75, but they're not going to be an algae eater like you would think most plecos. They're going to eat what your regular fish eat. They're not necessarily going after algae or going to clean your glass. This is comparatively a pretty expensive fish as well. I mean, they're probably going to run you a couple $100, $200-$300 per sunshine pleco, depending on its size, and they are slow growers. A lot of the times it takes a couple years just to get half grown like mine is. They are slow growers. A lot of the times it takes a couple years just to get half grown like mine is. But when it comes to tank mates, I mean, you can keep pretty much anything with it that you don't plan on breeding. So if your fish lay eggs and you want them to breed, don't keep a sunshine pleco. It's going to come in the middle of the night and eat it. It can also be said that you probably shouldn't keep them with rays because they tend to try to suck on the sides of a rays. Again, these guys are more of a carnivore than anything. The other fish breeding in this tank right now is my tiger barbs. I've never bred tiger barbs because I've never really put much emphasis on them. Besides these guys, when we got them a few months ago, or maybe it was a year or so ago, I added them to this tank almost as an afterthought, just to liven it up a little bit and act as a dither fish. A lot of people thought that the tiger barbs were going to, go after the angel fins, or the Severum's fins, or just eat everybody's fins, and that would have been the case in like a 30-gallon tank with 5 tiger barbs and a few angelfish, because when you have a small amount of tigers, they tend to be a lot more aggressive. They're not occupied with themselves. I highly suggest you get 6 to 8 minimum tiger barbs if you don't want any problems, and keep away from small tanks with other fish. Other than that, I've tossed these guys. What do we have here? 30 or 50? I don't know if you guys remember. And we put them in a 2,000-gallon tank. I want you to find a single fish in here with a torn fin. There isn't any. Tiger barbs are leaving them alone, but they're also actively breeding and flashing, and that's really interesting and fun to watch. The downside is it's really hard to see everything in such a deep tank with such thick viewing panel and trying to see such small fish. I guess that's one of the only things that I regret about this being a community tank, is it can be tough to see everything. Those Denizen barbs, man, I remember when those guys were going extinct, and they were incredibly expensive, over $100 a piece. Now they're incredibly common. They are found in India. Tiger barbs are from Borneo, if you're curious. They only get to about 6 inches, but they're incredibly active, and one of my favorite barbs. I got to admit, though, the tiger barbs, hands down, my favorite barb of all time. I just think it's a classic looking fish. I love the black bars. You know what I really like that I think I want to do for a Central American aquarium, and a lot of you guys, especially new people in the hobby, might not appreciate them anymore because they're so common and they're so affordable, and they're so easy to keep and breed, but I love the convict cichlid. Let me know if you agree with that. I love their contrasting colors. I love their bars. I love how easy they are to breed. I love what they look like when they get adults and get into breeding dress. I think they're just an absolutely gorgeous fish, but because they're so easy to breed and they're so cheap, a lot of people sleep on them. I think I'm going to have to bring them back into popularity, and let me know what you guys think there. The last fish in this tank is one of the fish that's definitely getting moved to the new gallery, and that's the Archer. I want to set up an Asian-themed aquarium with these guys in it, and I want to be able to take the tops off and set up some targets so we can do target practice with flies or krill or whatever the case might be. This tank's just too big to do that in, but you will notice that they constantly circle the tree. It's almost as if it's instinctual, and they think something's going to drop from a tree, like a bug or an insect, and they're going to get it. I can't see these guys swimming out in open water because they do spit at bugs and whatnot to knock them off of the leaves and branches, so it's very instinctual for them to swim around things like this, and that's what they do. They circle it non-stop. I thought you guys might appreciate that and seeing that, because it's really interesting to watch. These guys, though, are the clouded archer. They're typically found between Bangladesh and Thailand. I got them back in August of 2020. They are one of the smaller archers, only getting to about 12 inches, but probably going to max out at 8. When we have these max size, that's because somebody found one in the wild, or there's been an abnormality where a fish has been, found, but it's not common. So when you hear about max size, a lot of the times they don't actually get to that. That's just like one that was found type of deal. These are surface feeders though, but they will eat a variety of foods, and I've watched them eat sinking foods constantly, so it doesn't have to be a floater. There's no known way to sex these guys, and they're rarely bred in captivity though. So if you plan on getting them and breeding them, good luck. Maybe we'll have some luck in the gallery, but we'll see what happens. The thing that I like about these guys, always active, never really hide, and if they do, they just kind of circle in a smaller area, always circling like a little pool of piranhas, which we also have. Just not in this tank, for obvious reasons. Downside to archers is they will eat smaller fish. I had a bunch of tetras in here one day, and within a week they were all... I had a bunch of smaller tetras in this tank, and the next day I did not. The archers had fat bellies though, so can't be putting them in with smaller fish. The benefit to the clouded archer though is one of the only archer fish that's a true freshwater archer fish. The majority of the rest are brackish water, which is a mixture of salt water and freshwater, meeting in between. However, a brackish water tank with some monos and archers and maybe some puffers and things like that is something I've been seriously considering, and let me know if you want to see that in the near future. With that said, if you guys enjoy this type of video, I'm rushing it along. I feel like I'm rushing myself just to try to talk about everything, but if you guys like this type of video and you really want me to dump a lot of information about fish onto you, let me know in the comment section below. And if you're not one that comments, just hit the like button, and I'll continue to make these types of videos as I can. Anyways, that's it for today's video. I want to thank you guys for watching. If you want to further support this channel, you might want to consider becoming a member. I'll be going live this Sunday with members only. I also have links in the description to the book I wrote, as well as a lot of the shirts and hoodies and merch and that sort of thing as well. If you want to get yourself some cool stuff, plus support the channel, I'd highly appreciate it. See you guys in the next video.